simply choose to demonstrate their support in a different manner. I don't propose to start climbing any trees at our age, which would be a bit silly. I don't propose to break the law in any way at all. But I do maintain that we all have a democratic right to make our voices heard.
Just one protester remains in what they've called the Zion tree camp. He's refusing to leave his tunnel. As attention switched today to this tree camp, known as Wild Garlic, there were 2 further arrests. One of those arrested was 70 feet up a Scots pine with his earlobe nailed to the tree. The Under-Sheriff is promising no let-up over the weekend as the eviction gathers pace. Stuart Flinders, North West Tonight, Manchester Airport.
Well, a short while ago, I asked the Under-Sheriff that, given protesters were injuring themselves, were matters now getting out of hand?
Not at all, no. The eviction is basically going according to plan, and a great deal of planning went into this eviction. In fact, in some ways we're ahead of schedule, but we're having difficulty with the tunnels at the moment. The one on Zion Hill is more complicated than we thought. One protester came out this morning, but there's one protester left inside. We're not sure how long that tunnel is.
But you said yesterday that lives were in danger, and today we have a protester nailing his ear to a tree.
Yes.
Surely it's time for a rethink before someone is seriously injured or dies.
No, I don't think there's any necessity for a rethink at all. Safety has always been the top of our priorities right from the word go. And we've got an ambulance on site 24 hours a day, a doctor on site 24 hours a day with his own little mini theatre, hospital theatre, and safety has always been the top of our priorities.
But if you go into those tunnels, if you break into those tunnels, I mean, we had an engineer telling us yesterday that will collapse the tunnels, as will heavy vehicles on the ground overhead. So, I mean, what's your strategy?
No, there are no heavy vehicles on the site anywhere near the tunnels. We're not using cherry pickers that have been used at other sites. And it's all going according to plan, basically. So
when Martin Bell, the MP for Tatton, calls on this to be much more open, the eviction to be in the open, to allow cameras to go right inside, to allow journalists there, why won't you allow that to happen? We have made extensive press facilities available, and as far as I know, basically the press are very satisfied with the facilities that have been provided. I think they'd like to get much closer to the tunnels and see what's going on than they're allowed. It's far too dangerous, and the tunnels themselves like anonymity. The slope down to the river from the tunnel heads is extremely steep, and with all the rain we've had, we've had to make steps down the hill itself. So in a word, how long before you get all the protesters out? It's very difficult to say, because we've got other camps to deal with, but it's at least 2 weeks, I think. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And that's interview.
Hi, Michael.
Quiet, everybody. The proposed runway to shout messages of support. Melanie Abbott reports.
The message from the villagers couldn't be clearer. They say the airport already disturbs them, and a second runway will destroy the countryside.
I feel that for future generations, we've got to look after our environment and our green belt, because it's been eroded away day by day, week by week, by big, powerful companies, and I don't feel that's fair.
This is a totally unnecessary second runway, which Manchester Airport don't need, because for great periods during the day, there is not a plane down on the apron.
That's why they're backing the protesters inside the perimeter fence, who came out to answer their calls.
If I wasn't nearly 70, I'd probably be on that side. But climbing trees and going down holes is not the right thing for a 70-year-old person.
I just think they're very brave, and I just admire the persistence, you know, and sleeping out these nights can't be much fun.
They're doing things that we couldn't do because we're normal working people.
Two very different groups have been brought together, fighting against a common enemy. Further inside, evictions from the tree houses and tunnels continue.
In spite of the fact that they tend to be getting a bit heavy-handed now, we want to keep it fluffy. We want to, you know, just go through the evictions with a bit of dignity.
The sheriff's men say their work will carry on over the bank holiday weekend. Melanie Abbott, ITN, Manchester.
Merseyside, how about a nail through his ear, trying to avoid eviction from his treehouse 80 feet above the ground. Sue Hesseltine reports.
Known as Baldy to his fellow eco-warriors, Carl Wells could only be evicted from his treetop hideaway after a 6-inch nail was removed from his ear. 22-year-old hammered the nail through an existing earring hole after he heard bailiffs approaching.
When they got about, I think it was about 4 or 5 feet away from us, me and my mate Craig, we nailed the trapdoor shut between us. He shot up into the high branches whilst I was nailing my ear to the trapdoor. Like, we had all the nails set up and everything like.
This morning, local residents had staged a more conventional protest, a march to the development site and a silent vigil at the gates.
Detectives investigate.
The protesters deny being responsible. Meanwhile, there's been a protest march at the site. Ralph Blunson is there now.
Well, the day began here when more than 200 people, mostly from villages affected by the proposed second runway, marched along the road here. They walked right up to the main entrance to the campsite. The size of this morning's march once again demonstrated there are a number of local residents who continue to support the protesters.
The people that are in the tunnels and up the trees are not just dirty layabouts, they're actually, they're giving their time and their lives for us.
I think they're extremely brave. I would not want to go down a tunnel.
Carl from New Brighton on the Wirral, known as Baldy, was yesterday brought down from a treehouse after he'd nailed his ear to the wooden door.
They've sort of like seen me nailed to the trapdoor of the treehouse, and he went back down for a little bit, and he asked Craig if he could take a photograph of me for his portfolio of all the mad things, what they've seen on all the protest sites.
Well, he may be down from his treetop home, but many aren't and are still on the site, in the trees and in the tunnels. And we're expecting the Under-Sheriff's eviction procedures to continue tomorrow.
2. She's manacled by the wrists and ankles to a trapdoor in the tunnel, and the bailiffs fear she could be seriously hurt if they force their way in. Meanwhile, supporters have mounted a river-borne operation to deliver food to the campaigners. Trevor Green has the latest.
They call themselves the CSABs, but their repeated attempts to outmaneuver the sheriff's men using the River Bollin brought about this clash with bailiffs.
I must now point out that you are committing a common assault.
The group went in under darkness and again at dawn in a flotilla of toy inflatables carrying supplies of food and batteries. Amazingly, no one was hurt as a tug-of-war developed involving this man.
We took legal advice and found out that the river is controlled by the Environment Agency, and there was no such injunction placed on us by the Environment Agency, and by rights that river should still be legally navigable.
So you're saying what you did wasn't illegal in any way?
No, we had informed the sheriff what we would be doing and that we wouldn't be setting foot on any of the camps, but leaving the food and equipment actually in the island that we'd built in the middle.
This morning it was the turn of Sir Cliff Richard. That's the name of the 4th camp to be entered, but in one of the 2 tunnels, bailiffs were faced with an extraordinary act of defiance.
The main tunnel contains 4 protesters. One is a girl who is in a full-body lock-on immediately below a door. We're not sure which door it is, but she has a noose around her neck so that it's impossible to get her out by removing that door. There is internal communication with the protesters in the tunnels, which are being supplied with fresh air.
They don't wish to be martyrs. They've asked us to make that perfectly clear. But they have a set of demands which we will be issuing on their behalf over the next couple of days.
The woman is said to be chained in a crucifix position, and there are between 20 and 30 protesters in trees. It's now 8 days since the eviction began. Some protesters have already managed to get themselves back onto the site. Others have set up fresh camps elsewhere, and so Operation Fulcrum is far from over yet. One of the new camps is in this woodland about a mile from the runway site. The protesters are claiming squatters' rights and a whole new legal process may be needed to get them out.
Trevor Green reporting there, and now on to the extraordinary story of 2 girls.
A contingency plan has been agreed by airport protesters and the Under-Sheriff of Cheshire to deal with a medical emergency amid fears for the safety of a woman refusing to leave a tunnel on the site of the 2nd runway. She has tied a noose around her neck and attached it to a door that the bailiffs need to open to get her out. Stuart Flinders reports.
The woman is holding out in one of 2 tunnels at a camp they've called the Sir Cliff Richard OBE Vegan Revolution Camp.
If the door is raised like that, the strict around her neck will strangle her. That's the bottom line on that one. So we've either got to work around it or come in by the side, but there's absolutely no question of any risk being taken with her safety.
The woman's situation was discussed at an emergency meeting between protesters and the Under-Sheriff. The bailiffs have cleared 3 of the 6 camps that were here a week ago, but over the weekend 3 new camps have appeared. They've called this camp We're Over Here. A second is called And Over Here. The third, And Also Here.
It's a reception point for people who've just been evicted from Cliff Ritter this morning. It's a point for new arrivals to come and protest, and we give them information and a cup of tea and whatever else they need.
This is the base for the CSABs, a direct action group with maritime expertise. For the past 2 days, they've been trying to ferry supplies to the besieged protesters along the River Bollin.
We returned here, sought legal advice from the Environment Agency and solicitors, and we were informed that we were legally entitled to go down the river.
The eviction has been described as a medieval battle, but it's far more gentlemanly than that. At 3:30 every afternoon, water supplies are provided by the security men for the protesters based at Flywood Camp. And tonight, both sides declared themselves happy for the most part with the way the evictions have been carried out in the first week. Stuart Flinders, North West Tonight, Manchester Airport.
Well, we now join Stuart live and what looks like a very pleasant evening out there at the airport. Stuart, the protester with the noose around her neck down in the tunnel, how precisely are they planning to get her out uninjured?
Well, the Under-Sheriff is now resigned to it taking 2 or 3 days to remove her, and the latest idea is that a new tunnel be built by his tunnellers to reach around the back of the woman and approach her from that side so that the door doesn't need to be opened.
Now, that's just one of the many hazards that are facing the authorities, isn't it? I mean, you've got examples of several other, I understand.
Yes, each day seems to bring a new challenge for the bailiffs. Tonight, they're very concerned about the discovery of a canister of the highly explosive butane gas, which was found near the entrance to one of the tunnels, and they believe that more canisters could be inside the tunnels, although I should stress that there's no suggestion that these have been left there as any kind of booby trap. It's just that they may have been left behind, having been used for cooking or lighting.
OK, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
To the tunnel door on the site of the proposed second runway. She's now said to be safe, but bailiffs said she turned herself into a human booby trap. This report now from Trevor Green. Sorry about that, we seem to have technical problems with that tape. On the site of the proposed second runway. She's now said to be safe, but bailiffs said she turned herself into a human booby trap. This report now from Trevor Green.
This was the rope cut from around the neck of a determined protester who chained herself inside a tunnel in a crucifix position. The macabre human trap greeted professional tunnellers when they tried to evict more protesters from the site of the proposed second runway. Had they disturbed a door in one of the tunnels, the young woman may have been seriously harmed, possibly killed, because the rope was attached to it. These pictures are from inside that tunnel, said to be the most difficult and dangerous to work in. But Mr. Randall Hibbert, the Under-Sheriff, claimed he expected to be able to persuade the woman to come out possibly this evening.
There was a doctor at the tunnel head all the time, and eventually we were able to cut the rope holding the noose together, and the girl is now in what's called a crucifix lock-on, with her arms spread eagle like this. She'd been there apparently since 7 o'clock yesterday morning. There are 3 other people down that tunnel, we think, as well.
Mr. Hibbert also denied claims he was prepared to cut off food supplies from supporters in the village of Mobberley.
We've been saying to them, why won't you let them have basic things like bread and fruit? They've searched the bags anyway, so we're not sending anything sort of illegal in. It's only food.
You think it's just purely an attempt to starve the protesters out?
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure that's the reason behind it, which is inhumane.
And in scenes verging on farce, these protesters from a neighbouring camp came out to chat to police as they watched the action nearby. Cheshire Police say they can only arrest protesters when specifically asked to do so by the Under-Sheriff. Day 9, and this eviction is still receiving a great deal of media attention. With people up trees and down tunnels, everyone's hoping the whole operation will be concluded with safety. Meanwhile, Manchester Airport has declined to confirm reports that the whole operation has cost in excess of £4 million. A further 7 have been arrested, and the 4th camp is expected to be cleared of squatters by the weekend.
Trevor Green reporting. Well, later in the programme, we've heard from the girls. Next we've got...
And find out why these children are fixing a new tail on a dinosaur. Hello, and first, the battle over Manchester Airport's second runway. More protesters at the site of the proposed second runway at Manchester Airport have been moved by police today. Nearly 80 people have been arrested over the past 2 weeks. But the operation to evict the rest is proving difficult. The protesters have started to build new camps nearby and have pledged they'll never leave the area. Chris has been to the Manchester protest sites for this special report.
The evictions are a slow process. Many protesters chain themselves to trees while others hide in tunnels. Most of the protesters who are evicted from the original campsites have ended up here. This is a new one called Troll Bridge, but already it looks like they're going to be evicted from here as well. They've already been given their first verbal warning, and it's only a matter of days before they'll be forced to leave. However, they're determined to continue their campaign.
We thought the Greenbelt was here to protect our countryside. But all of a sudden, when it comes to development, bang, they'll stick it in for money. And what we're trying to partly raise is, you can't buy our countryside. We have very little left.
What they're doing is wrong. We need the environment. You can't put a price on it.
Today, a spokesperson for Manchester Airport told Newsround the second runway is needed for the growing number of people who want to travel by air. It'll create thousands of jobs, and plant life and animals will be moved to a new area. Some of the demonstrators have protested against other building projects and claimed some victories, but many demonstrations ended in clashes with police and little sympathy from the public. The protests over the Newbury bypass in Berkshire ended in hundreds of arrests and millions of pounds worth of police time. Many people have labelled the protesters as scruffy dropouts rather than serious environmentalists.
All right, I'm not employed at the moment, but if I wanted to, I could go out there and get a job like that tomorrow. I know I've got the qualifications to do it, but I choose to be here, which is the difference, because I know I can make a difference here where I can't anywhere else.
At 15, Steve Bunting is the youngest protester at Manchester Airport. He's still at school, but his parents allow him to join in on protests.
My school teachers have been down to the camps at the airport. Like, a couple of them have been down, and my parents are proud of me. So, apart from when I got arrested yesterday, my dad weren't too happy, but...
Do you really think this is the best way to voice your opinion?
By far, yeah, because I tried writing letters, gathering petitions, but it never works. They always find an excuse around it. And like, being here, they've got to listen to your argument.
So, it seems that the protesters won't go away, and the debate on whether such demonstrations should be allowed won't go away either. This is Chris Rogers for Newsround in Manchester.
The American
Education, as in Britain, are dominating the party's campaigns. On the final leg of his journey down the Mississippi...
Launched an assault on the heavily fortified Flywood camp. They're trying to evict a large group of protesters, many locked into a network of deep tunnels. It's expected to take several days to clear the site. Trevor Green has been following today's events.
Leaving 3 protesters still down tunnels at one site, the Under-Sheriff moved on unexpectedly this morning to the highly fortified Flywood camp. These are the first pictures of bailiffs still in their heavy black overalls and balaclavas, despite the heat, removing barbed wire and booby-trap shelters. The woodland solitude was shattered by the vibration of pneumatic drills attacking the concreted doors to the many tunnels, including this one known as Cake Hole, and said to be the biggest tunnel ever dug in such a protest.
We think this is going to be like the most difficult tunnel that they've ever had to deal with, and we're sure that it'll take them lots and lots of time, and you know, until they've got out, they can't start construction of the second runway.
Next, a mechanical digger started ripping up the camp, which also contains 8 tree houses, one named Battlestar Galactica. Arrests and evictions soon followed, but the Under-Sheriff, who just received news that protesters had invaded his office in Chester, admitted the tunnels presented a major problem and claimed officers were showered in urine and excrement. This 20-year-old from London told how she defied bailiffs for 2 days after concreting herself in a crucifix position 6 feet below ground and with a noose around her neck.
I was lying with my feet in the tunnel. My arms were on 2 blocks of concrete which were angled rather badly, so I had a slight twist. My left shoulder was bent back and sideways. I was at a sort of 45-degree angle sitting up and my back was propped up.
Work at Plywood will last several days, but tree dwellers remain as determined as ever.
Plywood, the serious defences are holding out fine.
How long are you going to stay up there, do you think?
Until they forcibly drag us down.
7/8 of business flights from Manchester are domestic. A far less damaging railway infrastructure already exists to serve this need.
Since the evictions began 11 days ago, there have been more than 80 arrests.
And we can join Trevor Green at the airport live now. Trevor, we've heard a lot about these tunnels. How many people are down them, and have they got enough food to survive?
Well, the reckoning at the moment is that there are about 8 people down 4 tunnels, including this massive cake hole tunnel. They've been stashing food for about 5 months now. They say they can stay down there for several weeks, really. The main concern are people who are up trees. Remember, it's been in the 70s today and yesterday, and there's grave concern about the fact that some of them are not getting enough water.
It's going to be a very hot weekend for them, but are we seeing this as a last stand, an effort by the protesters?
Well, certainly this operation is going to go on for several days, possibly more than a week, possibly 2 weeks yet, because the people here are said to be the hardcore, the hardened protesters. They're determined to stay down these tunnels for as long as possible. So, although it may be a last stand, it isn't over yet.
It's becoming a very expensive operation, isn't it, for the authorities there?
Indeed it is. We heard this week that the cost of this operation, remembering there have been police officers from both Cheshire and Greater Manchester here for 11 days now, is possibly more than £4 or £5 million.
Finally, what do we expect to see from both the bailiffs and protesters over the weekend?
Well, the operation goes on. The sheriff said right at the beginning that he would continue this eviction right through the weekend. He worked right through the bank holiday. Tomorrow we'll see more work by the bailiffs, and there's also evidence of a march that's going to take place by supporters of the protesters. People from the villages affected by this runway are coming here again, and Terry Waite is also expected to join them.
Thanks, Trevor.
My safety is obviously very important. I can't fight again if I'm dead or permanently injured. None of my people here want to die, but they will take a chance if it means it's the only way of getting a voice across.
In Chester, protest of a different sort. 13 demonstrators invaded the Under-Sheriff's office, staging a rooftop protest and handcuffing themselves to furniture. They were angry at the decision not to allow independent observers into the campsites during the eviction. The Under-Sheriff, meanwhile, has accused protesters of showering his men with bags of faeces and urine, and he's spoken about how long the Plywood operation may last.
The trees above the tunnel entrance, the main tunnel that we've got at Plywood, are being dismantled sectionally because of the fragile nature of the ground before the tunnels can start properly there.
Elsewhere, protesters have been accused of damaging the environment. Manchester Airport officials say they're occupying a nearby protected wood, which will not be affected by the second runway.
Well, I'm joined now by the Chief Executive of Manchester Airport, Jeff Muirhead. Mr. Muirhead, the airport's issued a very strong statement today branding the runway protesters as environmental vandals for setting up a camp at Burleyhurst Wood. Why do you feel so strongly?
Well, the wood in question is owned by Manchester Airport, but not part in any way, shape or form of the development of the runway. It is a designated site of special biological interest by the local authorities, and as such contains protected species. The people who moved in there clearly are not environmentally friendly people. They are putting at risk the very environment that they say they wish to protest. And I think it does lead a lie to the great majority of the claims that the protesters make.
So there are no plans whatever to put buildings on that site at any stage?
None whatsoever, and they know that there are no plans there. I'm not too sure whether they're aware of the site that they're on is of special biological interest, but if they were really interested in the environment, they would have found out before they acted.
Thinking of the eviction as a whole, how much has this all cost the airport?
Well, I mean, that's a matter for the contractors. We've got a contract with a joint venture to construct the runway, and the implications of the protest are included in that contract. And of course, I can't discuss the details of that.
I mean, a figure of 4 million has been suggested. Would that be fairly close?
Well, as I say, I can't comment one way or another about that figure.
OK, well, the airport has kept a very low profile during the eviction, whereas the protesters have been interviewed all the time and in some ways may be winning the propaganda war. Why haven't you been coming out with your own side of the story on a regular basis?
Well, in terms of what's happening on the site, it is a matter for construction, the constructing companies, to manage that process, and the airport does not wish to become overly involved in it. The debate about the rights and the wrongs of the runway has been well aired many, many times over through the 100 days of the inquiry, and will probably considered.
OK, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Fine, thank you.
Well, now, a small...
now requires round-the-clock care. And that's it for now. We'll be back in Breakfast News just before 6:30 tomorrow morning, and of course I'll be along with North West Tonight, 6:30 tomorrow evening. Until then, a very good night from us. Here's the weather with Bill Giles. Good night.
A very good evening to you. The weather's turning much more unsettled now. There's been quite a lot of rain around this evening. You can see it on the radar pictures over central parts of the country, and more particularly up the western side. A lot of rain across in Scotland too, and we've seen that pulses of rain moving northwards through this evening. Red shows some heavy rain too, and that stretches right back across into Ireland. This is where the heaviest of the rain has been this evening. Not just heavy rain, but thunderstorms as well. In fact, we've got a severe weather warning out for Northern Ireland just now. It says heavy rain and thunder will continue this evening, with some flooding and winds gusting up to over 40 miles an hour. It looks as though the rain's going to continue to work its way northwards and eastwards as we go through the night, but over central and eastern parts I think it'll be clearing away before the end of the night. But not a cold night, only down to about 11 degrees Celsius, that's 52 degrees Fahrenheit. So then tomorrow, eastern parts of the country, starting off dry, starting off bright too, but showers already in the west, and indeed up in northwestern Scotland there'll be some more persistent rain still, and that'll be pushing its way across up in towards Shetland. And then through the afternoon, these heavy and somewhat blustery showers getting right across to the eastern side of the country. I say blustery because the southwesterly winds could well be gusting up 20-30 miles an hour, and a much fresher day tomorrow. Temperatures at the best about 14 Celsius, 57 Fahrenheit, may get a little bit higher in East Anglia, but I doubt it, and then about 13 across in many parts of Scotland. And then it looks as though this low is going to really wind itself up for Sunday. That's wet, that's windy too across most parts of the country. So on Saturday, not too bad, dry with some sunshine from most places. There will be some showers still in that northwestern part. They'll be dying out in the afternoon as the first of the wet and windy weather comes into the southwest, and that'll sweep right across the country on Sunday. Heavy rain, especially in the northwest, patchy in the southeast, and then in the south becoming brighter, but with some blustery showers. That's the forecast. Bye for now.
Robert Maxwell, enigma, tycoon, outstanding fraudster. For 20 years, Tom Bauer has probed the secrets of the Maxwell empire. Now, 5 years after his death, Inside Story can finally reveal the truth he tried so desperately to hide. The conspiracy, intrigues, loves, and lies of a man publicly applauded, but secretly heading towards disaster. Maxwell, The Downfall, an Inside Story special, Tuesday at 10:25 on BBC One.
In 45 minutes' time, two of the finest and most distinguished sportsmen this country has ever produced are going to be fondled by this pair. Join us for the last in the present series of They Think It's All Over after the X-Files.
Frank Skinner and Damon Hill are all talk with Clive Anderson tonight at 11:45 here on BBC One.
Protesters who are defying the evictors. From the scene, Sue Turton.
The protest took on an altogether more genteel feel today as Terry Waite added his voice to that of local people who will be directly affected by the runway.
Call a halt to this development now.
It's an emotive issue for the former hostage. He grew up in a village next to the airport. He's calling on the new government to put its pledge of a more environmentally friendly transport policy into action.
We cannot allow a transport policy to develop in this country which ravages the environment. Now, this government has recognised that, the new government. What we would like them to do is to say, now, stop this development until such time as it can be considered in the light of your new transport policy.
My parents are farmers, and it's sad for all the land that's going to be taken off them.
And as a child,